Here is another interesting point. All throughout history, the United States had enemies, and the greatest enemies it ever had were fascist regimes. For example, the Communists and the Nazis. Do you know that these regimes all featured in their security policies arrests without charge, secret courts and trials, indefinite detention without any ability for the accused to defend himself, and even torture? America has now changed and has adopted the same rules and has called them the Patriot Act. All the horrible fascist regimes of history always had these rules for security. Can you now swell out your chest and say that you are safe because you live in a country that has always stood for justice? There are many who are spinning their heads and saying in disbelief, "This is America?" What then about churches that are changing and following the same general pattern in the changes they are accepting, actually doing things they had formerly condemned? Both entities are changing. The problem with this most don't see is that such changes would demand a condemnation against all their histories. Such changes would demand a wholesale condemnation on other states or other churches that refuse to change. Can't you see that it is possible to call these churches cults? The changing going on with the churches today are the same changes that were dreaded and forbidden in former years. Just the endeavor to build a global church encompassing the whole world was looked upon as the worst ecclesiastical treason. Here is an example of one person who dreaded and forbade such changes, showing how these changes taking place today were universally forbidden among the Protestant churches and proving thence why such changes can only be taking place now. Listen to this narration that is very haunting as we see and understand that most Christians today are telling us they are forming a great one-world church. To the charge that the Roman Catholic Church had changed and that anyone having a problem with all the churches linking up to her merely have ancient visions of the 16th century, Lord Macaulay had this reply. But even with such a great cloud of witnesses, one might be tempted to ask the following question: has not Rome changed recently? To answer this most vital question, I turn once again to the message of D. Martin Lloyd Jones. Ah, but, you say, has not the Roman Catholic Church changed? You are simply looking back. You are speaking as if you lived in the 16th century. Don't you realize you are living in the 20th century? My answer is quite simple. The proudest boast of the Roman Catholic Church is this, that she never changes. Semper idem. How can she change? If she changes, she will be admitting that she was wrong in the past. But she was saying then that she was infallible and that the Pope is the vicar of Christ and that he cannot make a mistake. If she says that she is capable of change, she is denying her central claim. She does not say that she is changing, and she never will. The Church of Rome remains the same. If anything, she's even worse. She has added things to what she taught in the 16th century, such as papal infallibility, etc. No, there is no change in the Church of Rome. And if there ever is one great world church, meaning if anything like this ever shows up in the future, it will be because the Church of Rome has absorbed all the rest and swallowed them in ignorance. All the churches are uniting, and just as we more and more hear that all the governments of the world are uniting into a new world order, people in church are hearing that all the churches are uniting and are forming a one-world church. The very scenario described and regularly dreaded by the Protestants throughout history is actually happening before our eyes and actually happening with their consent. What would then happen if all the Christian churches unite? Well, as this is happening, these churches are increasingly becoming aware of the fact that there are cults among them. They are more and more voicing their concerns that there are churches and people in the world around them who will not agree with this uniting and who refuse to become a part of it. These are the ones that are now called cults. the definition of what is a cult has been shown to be rather confusing and even arbitrary. But the name is now very much widely used, even though the incidents described surrounding cults were few and far between, and where the authorities got involved. The authorities have not been involved in what is now being, at the very least, suggested as being cults. Specifically, who are these cults? Would you believe that these cults are turning out to be all churches and even independent bodies that refuse to unite and join this one world church union? Any church body like this is automatically labeled as a cult.